Welcome to Strength Chat Podcast, presented by Kabuki Strength. Introducing your hosts, Chris Duffin, the mad scientist of strength, Rudy Cadlove, mature athlete and coach, and the wizard of training himself, Brandon Sen.
On today's Strength Chat, we talk to the speed guy, Lee Taft. We talk about the basics of what is multi-directional speed and its impacts and importance to athletics development. We talk about the 6 basic movements and integration of strength training and speed training over the course of this podcast. Absolutely tremendous level of detail and content. Welcome to Strength Chat with your host, that's right, the man you're listening to right now, the mad scientist of strength, Chris Duffin. To my right, with a big smirk and a giggle laughing at me, as he usually does, is on the intro. He's just, he is so jealous of my intro voice. That must be it.
No, I love it.
We have our mature athlete and coach.
You're getting good at it. This is your 47th episode or something.
Our mature athlete and coach, Dr. Rudolph, Dr. Rudy.
Good to be here.
Yep. Hey, speaking of Rudolph, it's getting that time of year.
It is.
I'll get to a slightly funny story here in a bit. But to my left, the wizard of training, pulling on his stash over here, the Brandon Sen. He is bundled up like myself because it is cold. It is winter. And speaking of that, we're rolling well into December now. We're running on fumes here at Kabuki Strength because we have lots of product that we're shipping out from the old Black Friday. We've got seminars running. Plus, there's a lot of stuff this time of year with giving. So we just help participate with a local event, Deadlift for Dornbeckers, where it was put on by a local gym, Savage Barbell, and we were a large sponsor of the event. I ended up raising about $30,000 for Dornbeckers Children's Hospital. So that was a good time. I guest judged with my kids and whatnot. So mostly I sat there and my kids judged. And I
want to also mention and thank our customers who got onto our site and purchased anything over Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. We had dedicated to provide a care kit for the Home Builders Foundation, which is our adopted nonprofit that we've been working with for quite a while. And with over 600 orders, we're contributing over $3,000 to the Home Builders Foundations to provide care packages, care kits, and meals for the transitionally homeless.
Care kits for the homeless, I believe, is the name. And actually, we have shortly. I've got a number of those kids coming out here to the lab. And I'll be giving them a little.
That'll be between Christmas and New Year.
A little pep talk and motivation. So I'm looking forward. Looking forward to that. I enjoy that. So
thank you to all our customers for helping us do that. Appreciate it.
All right. We ready to move in? I'm getting the nod, the approval nod from Brandon.
Says go.
Brandon says go.
I think so.
Can you hear anything?
Why are you guys so bundled up? You act like you're in the North Pole here.
It's cold.
Our guest is in Indiana, and he's like
cold too.
at -2 there, and we're a balmy 48. And
I have
you guys
shorts
are
on.
buttoned up like you're
I have shorts
in
on.
the
What are you
North
talking
Pole or
about?
something.
Do your headphones do any good when they're over the top of your hoodie?
Yeah,
Okay. Just checking.
they do.
So today we're really happy to have on Lee Taft. Lee is the speed guy. So his focus is on multi-directional speed. And I think this is a really good topic for us to spend some time on today. But Lee has been in the industry for quite some time. He's been working on his approach to multi-directional speed for 25 years, probably longer. He's got a book he released in 2003, Groundbreaking Athletic Movement. And Lee has worked with and spoken with, it's actually it'd probably be easier to list the places he hasn't, but he's worked with numerous pro teams, collegiate teams, athletes on both, spoken at so many CSCA, NSCA, Exos, like the list goes on and on and on and on. I could spend a bunch of time doing that, but welcome to the program, Lee.
Hey, guys, thank you. I'm excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, so this the whole topic of multi-directional speed, I think is really interesting and pertinent. We still see a lot of people today, in at least the strength world, that are, when dealing with athletes that aren't looking at those rotational planes, transverse, like some of the things that play a role in that, and really still focused on just developing strength in the sagittal plane, and expecting a lot of that to happen in the sports performance side of it. Over the course of your career, have you been seeing some of that that approach kind of shift in the general population with strength coaches working with different teams in different sports?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing that was always taught to us from when I was young was you can't teach speed. And, of course, it's a skill. So, we have the ability to actually make an athlete more efficient, and really that's what we're after. I've got known for years as, teaching speed, but I also know, my bread is buttered through strength training. So if I can make produce that force quickly, then my speed potential gets better. So whether it's change of directions, linear, retreating, whatever, it's that strength quality. And I think we're starting to see coaches are understanding, we can actually teach this because we just got to become mechanically sound. So, absolutely. We're starting to see it become understood better.
Good. Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to have both in development, and strength is key. But if you're only focused on just that, you're not going to get as much transfer into the sports side of things. For our audience, can you tell us how do you go about developing or teaching, as you say, teaching speed?
Multi-directional speed for field and court sports, ice, hockey, things of that nature where there's a lot of change of directions, there is acceleration, retreating, things of that nature. What we want to do is understand that there's more to just the actual running or shuffling or crossover or those things. There's the elements that I spend a lot of time right now on teaching other coaches and teaching athletes is if we can get them in an environment where they get more and more exposure to potential movements, what happens is that experience starts to build their confidence. It starts to build their what we call the prediction model. So they start to eliminate some of the potential options, and so it actually makes us appear quicker. For example, if you take an athlete like Larry Bird wasn't known as being, the fastest, highest jumping athlete, but he always seemed to be in the right place at the right time. Well, that's experience. That's being around it. That's seeing the game and having a lot of exposure as a young athlete. And so when I train speed, we try to put athletes in situations where they have to go through random and reactive situations and learn to predict where they might potentially move. So that's a different element other than just the typical technique of movement, which is extremely important. But that's another area that we have to always look at, and I spend a lot of time investigating that area.
Yeah, I think I was reading something from you about just watching movement in play, watching athletes and looking at their postures and where their hip position is. And, it doesn't, some people think that, you've got to be an expert in a specific sport, but like this is basic human movement fundamentals, right? So,
yep.
The ability to shift quickly and move quickly, those positions, postures, and transitions, I think are pretty similar across a lot of sports, right? Obviously, there's
Absolutely.
some level of specialization. Can you spend some time on discussing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes what happens is we get too caught up on the sport specificity, which we do know, especially at the higher levels, is important, but that's always grown out of the foundation of movement anyway, general movement. So if we look at speed, we've got linear speed, we got two things. We got acceleration, we got max velocity. Lateral, we either have a shuffle or a crossover. If we go retreating or going backwards, we could either backpedal or we could open up, turn and run, turn and shuffle, turn and crossover, or we have vertical. So there's really like 6 things that we have to deal with. And what we do specifically for a sport is like a tennis player might play a little bit higher And then maybe a basketball player or a wrestler gets a little bit lower because of leverage or because of eyesight. Tennis player plays a little higher because they got to see over the net. So their actions are actually much more reactive, kind of a little bit more, not straight-legged, but a little bit straighter leg, a lot more bouncy and quick movements. You take a linebacker sits a little more powerful, explosive moves, but still, when we need to accelerate in any direction, it comes down to force production and angle of force production to move our mass into that direction. So really, it doesn't matter the sport you play. What we do is the specificity comes in with the task at hand. So a soccer goalie's job is different than a linebacker. Their feet are going to be planted differently, or a basketball player guarding another player is going to be different than a soccer player, because a soccer player plays with their feet. They get in position to play with their feet. Basketball player gets in position to play with their hands. And so, from that respect, movement is movement. We just specialize it when we need to, but I'm also a big fan of letting the coaches handle that. Let us get them stronger, faster, more mobile, and safer.
Yep. Yeah, we're the strength coaches, not the sport coach. But
that's right.
So it doesn't get missed. Can you repeat those 6 basic movements for our listeners?
Yeah. So if we're talking about straight ahead running, we've got acceleration, trying to get our mass moving quickly, and then we've got max velocity, so sprinting. If we go laterally, we've got a shuffle or a crossover, or what I like to call a lateral run step, where you kind of turn your hips. So we get those 2 movements. And then we have a vertical, so either we're going to jump or hop or something like that. And then retreating, we're either backpedaling or we're doing one of the other movements we just talked about. We're either turning and shuffling, turning and crossing over, or turning and running. So really, that's it. Those are the movements that we're built around. Now it just becomes the degree or the angle at which they move. But there's really not a lot of, patterns that we have. It's kind of like strength training. You got to push, pull, vertical, horizontal, squat, lunge, bend. That's it. And then we just build around that.
So you mentioned speed, the dimension of anticipation or experience. Larry Bird knowing where to be at the right time, so he's anticipating that contributes to speed. But when you talk about multi-directional, you just listed those. I'm interested in the work you do on change of direction. We see so many athletes in field sports making a change of direction, sometimes at full speed, and something giving out. How do you coach that to efficiently move through a change of direction, and also to minimize the risk of injury?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we think of change of direction, if we think of certain athletes, we're going to go Barry Sanders, right? Michael Vick, these guys that put their foot in the ground and it's like they were shot out of a cannon. They change direction so quickly. Well, we know what we're looking at is when an athlete puts their foot in the ground to change directions, we need to have an element of stiffness. And that's the ability of that muscle to be able to, return that force really quickly and to move our body. Now, for that to happen, we have to have proper joint alignment. As a young athlete, when I grew up in the 70s and early 80s playing in high school, we were taught to play on the balls of our feet, and our heels should be off the ground. Well, we now know that that's very inefficient, because what it does is it opens the ankle joint. Now we no longer have that nice dorsiflex position, which creates a great stretch shortening cycle when our foot hits the ground. So if the heel is touching the ground, but the weight is shifted forward over the balls of the feet, we now have what we call a loaded ankle position or a closed ankle joint. That produces a really nice a action-reaction force, because we don't leak energy. So now, if we kind of come up the chain a little bit, the knee, and this is counterintuitive to what most people think. They think our legs are always bent. Well, they are bent, but a short amount of time, because the more I bend, I get more power. But when I want to be quick, I want more impulse. I want more elastic release than I want this hard work to get out of a low position, like coming out of the bottom of a squat. I don't want that when I want to be quick. I want it to be very elastic, kind of like jump roping. So when we plant, those are the things we're looking for our energy return. Now, as we move up above the hips, now we start talking about frontal plane control, rotational plane control. So if you see an athlete, let's say, shuffling to their left, planting their left foot, wanting to go to the right, if their shoulders keep going over the top, kind of like side bending, I call that shoulder sway. Well, that's going to deplete that great foot plant you had, and it's going to slow it down. So we have to have really good reactive core training, basically, which means when my foot hits the ground through that kinetic chain, we have to have the core turn on to stabilize so that we can move in the other direction. So to me, change of direction is fascinating when we look at all the things that happen, and it happens so quickly. And that all falls under what I call repositioning. So wherever my foot was before the plant, it's now going to reposition into a better angle to meet the demands of my mass and momentum, and then it moves us in a new direction. So you get me started on that stuff. This could be a 3-hour show.
No, that's great. Let's keep rolling with it, because this is and it ties a lot with our philosophy as well.
A lot of stuff in there, rooting and core strength and stiffening. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's all about, I mean, we're taking power from that floor, and we take it and then move it through, that power generator, the hips, but you've got to have that stiff core. It doesn't matter if you're rotating, you're just dealing in the single planes and being able to get that power out to that distal end, out on the hand, shoulder, wherever it is that your sport needs that power put to.
Yeah, that's right. And what's really interesting with this stuff, if we think about it, like I have a 9-year-old son, and, I was a teacher for a long time. I taught K through 12, so I've the fun thing about that with all those kids were my guinea pigs as a sports performance coach, because I could try all these things with these little kids, and that was kind of my research. So what you look at is if you take a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old and play tag, these athletes still have the ability to stick their foot in the ground and change directions pretty quick. They can go. So we know just from watching that, and that's my whole philosophy is we need to look at what the body's already given us. It leaves us clues all the time as to how we want to move. So if my 9-year-old son can make a really quick fake and plant and cut really fast, he has no formal strength training. But what he has is this innate fight or flight that we were all given to survive. And when I train, I use that fight or flight mechanism as a tool to tap into our nervous system, because that's really what we do. We move based on our environment. A stimulus occurs, I'm either attacking it or I'm escaping from it. And it depends on if I'm an offensive player or defensive player. I'm either attacking or escaping. But that was given to us from the beginning of humanity. I mean, that's survival. And so I think too many coaches skip that part, is our central nervous system is leaving us clues. Now, as I get bigger and older and stronger and my body mass gets bigger, now that strength training comes into play to help me become even more stable to handle my mass. But again, if you watch a 7-year-old, they'll move like a Barry Sanders, not obviously as gifted, but they have those qualities. That's a clue that our body knows what to do. We just need to embrace it and kind of polish it off.
Yeah, that's great. That kind of ties to a piece you wrote in 2015 around, strength coaches not trying to look for the overly complex or this amazing little extra thing. Like, stick with the basics of like what the human body was designed for, because it's an amazing machine. You referred to it as I think a Ferrari, and. And I liked it because I love doing car analogies for human movement, neurology, all that sort of stuff as well. So, but it's like you're given this to start with, like, make that work and work with it instead of, trying to find that extra little, piece. You can do that, but don't do it until you've explored the basics and gotten the performance that's sitting there.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, one of the fun things that I did way back when I was a college athlete is I started to look at guys like Sammy Ball, Jesse Owens, Gale Sayers, who I think might have been one of the greatest running backs ever had he not had some knee issues. They didn't have guys like us. They didn't have, they didn't go after practice, go to their private trainer and, have all this stuff. They just intuitively knew how to move, and it was through probably a lot of sandlot playing in the backyard, and they just got exposure. And again, their nervous system understands it. There's a reason we have proprioceptors, and the reason we have the lateral aspect of our leg has this really thick IT band. It's there for a reason, because I cut on the outside 90% of the time. That takes a lot of energy, so you have to be a little thicker tissue there. So we have all these clues, but for some reason we want to ignore them, and we try to reinvent the wheel when all we've got to do is watch more, see how we're moving, and then let's plug in the holes. You know what I mean? I like to use the phrase, let's take out the garbage. There's always going to be some garbage left around. Let's clean that up. But the body's leaving us a lot of really nice clues. We just got to follow them.
I think when a lot of people assume speed training, they think of the drills and using bands and in different modalities like that, which obviously have a very pronounced place within the training process. But where does strength training play a role for you? And do you have some generalities that you tend to stick to in regards to the actual strength training of your athletes?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the more foundational we stay, especially with younger athletes, and to an extent with older athletes, squat, whether you're going bilateral, unilateral, push, power. Let's express power with some form of, whether it's a clean or a vertical jump or a snatch or a one-arm snatch or whatever it is. Stay to the basic stuff and produce force. Here's the nice thing is, we all have the ability, everybody has the ability to develop maximal strength. That's just a quality we can do. I mean, that's in us. That's how babies go from crawling to standing and walking and falling and getting back up. They're developing forms of their maximal strength at that age. So we have that. Everybody can develop that. So I think we can't overlook that. Then once we have that, now we can start to explore power, and let's express more force, or more strength quicker, so power. And then we can become a little bit more ballistic and elastic, so we can build upon this basic, really beautiful foundation of strength that we should be developing. So I stick to a lot of the basics now. Like currently, like tonight, I'll have 2 or 3 track athletes come to me. They're younger high school girls that are really good sprinters, but they still have a foundation to build. But at the same time, I will do some specific strength patterns for them to try to help them in their sport of sprinting. They have to have great quadricep power to be able to come out of the blocks. Hips are important, but we got to have great quads to push, get out of that acceleration. And then as we stand up, we get a little more hamstring, a little more hip and stuff like that. So we'll develop those qualities at all. But first, I want them to be able to squat. I want them to be able to push. I want them to be able to pull, and I want them to be able to explode. If you stay basic, gosh, you probably got 85% of your population taken care of. It's just there's maybe even more than that.
Yeah, you're definitely preaching to the choir there. We see oftentimes, our sport, we typically work with strength athletes, power lifters, all athletes in the sagittal plane, and we see all kinds of crazy stuff that people try to do to, like you said, reinvent the wheel, that, if they just did the things that work better, we might have a better outcome long term. Does strength training become less important the better the athlete gets in terms of qualification through their career?
Well, I think what happens is as an athlete develops their foundational strength, and they've now got the strength to provide their body the ability to play that sport at a high level. Okay, so they have enough strength to take a hit or to hold their line if they're driving in basketball and they're getting pushed. So they need a requisite strength level. I think once we have that, we have to keep investigating how much stronger we want an athlete to get without disturbing the nuances of their particular skill. So if it's a fine skill, like a tennis player, I spent, especially in the 90s, early 90s, I was with top-level tennis players, and, they would be the first ones to tell us. They're like, I feel like I'm not as fluid as I used to be. So we had to be careful as to our certain strength levels. Even track and field, there's a level, I think, when we get beyond, once they're strong enough, If we go beyond that and they get too strong, what happens sometimes it interferes with the contraction relaxation because their legs are turning over so fast. We got to be careful there. But here's the tough part. Nobody knows what that level is, and it depends on the athlete. We just know that there is a level. Usually athletes will tell you, or you'll start to see a decline in times. But I'm a fan of strength. I'm a fan of moving quickly, and especially of rate of force production. I want to produce force quickly, especially in my sports. Like you guys had talked about powerlifting. One of the girls I'll have tonight, she's a high school girl, but she's set a couple world records in powerlifting. For overall, I mean, she's a 447 deadlifter, 237 bench, and this is a high school girl. And so when we're working on track, for her, I've got to get her elastic energy back. I got to get her now. Let's produce that rate of force, quickly. And, because she can lift me up while she's doing the drills if she wants. She's got enough strength. Now I got to get her to do it faster.
That's really interesting. I've watched a lot of work specifically from Cameron Joss at DeFranco's, and he's done some work with velocity deficits and trying to balance velocity profiles between athletes. If you have an athlete who's a position player who maybe is more biased towards strength when they're lacking maybe some of those accelerative qualities, do you do any work with that, with velocity-based training or any other tools like that?
Well, it's funny. I have a good friend, Ty Terrell, who's done a lot with VBT training and a lot of research on it. And I don't have any of the tools. Like I don't have a Gym Aware or any of the things that I can actually do the testing. But what I do is I have this, basic jump mat, the jump mats that you can test there. So what I'll do often is if my athlete's vertical is at a certain level, and I give them a plus or minus, usually an inch or two on either end. If they start to get lower than that vertical that they've set a standard at, I know they're no longer producing the force that I want and they're not producing it quickly. So that's a measurement I'll give them. But I use now, because I don't have the tools, I use my eyes. So if we're doing a clean, a bench, a squat, a dead or whatever, and I'm trying to get some velocity in there and it's slowing down just visually, I know it's not as accurate, but it still provides me vision. Yeah, but if they're starting to slow down, then I'll change. We'll go to something different. But I think getting that neural drive is critical to peak performance.
Yeah, and it's just another tool. I have seen some of the work with the jump mats, and there's a device out now it's like a laser device that's similar to that, but something you can just toss in your backpack and kind of go. But I would assume, deviations from the standard from that vertical jump height, maybe ground contact times could be another indication of stress accumulation.
Yes.
We have done work with like grip strength in the morning and there's the Taft test and so many different things. They're all trying to get to the same thing. So, and we've seen that too. I mean, we've done a lot of work with velocity-based training specifically for strength athletes, and I can almost already tell like which way that athlete's going to be biased in their profile just by watching them squat heavy. It becomes pretty obvious once you've seen it enough. So developing that eye for movement, or the coach's eye, I think just comes with years and years of dedicated experience for sure.
A little bit of the art of coaching right there.
Yeah. And there's certainly a shift towards technology, and I'm always super interested in it because it's just another thing that hopefully we can squeeze a little bit more out. But I think over the course of the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see a real boom in technology, and I think it'll slowly swing back to that traditional, coach, what's coach want me to do versus what's the technology say. So I'm always interested to discuss that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of our goals as a strength industry is how frequently can we cut out the middleman? Because if we can go from point A to point C and kind of get around B, I think a lot of times that's when we make our progress. So if velocity-based training gets us to into our athlete's head quicker, then that's a good thing. But I never want to lose. I'm not always a fan of the phrase old school, because I think that sometimes denotes that, well, we don't change and we don't do this. But growing up, when I grew up, everything that I learned was hands-on. It was from watching and trial. I couldn't Google and get an answer. I had to go, like I tell my interns, I go to this place called a library, and they have these things called books. And so it took me a while to learn some of the things because it was just a slower pattern. But I think anytime we can speed it up without losing the experience coming from spending time on learning, I think that can be a positive.
Oh yeah, that's the biggest thing that I see is an over-reliance from some coaches on specific uses of technology. Whereas, if my HRV score says this, and this is absolutely what I have to do today, no matter what, and there's no real constructive thinking that goes behind that in lesser experienced coaches anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
People think about speed. We think about legs. Leg training. You've talked about quads, development of the quads, and how important that is for straight ahead, for sprinting, coming out of the blocks, and then hamstrings and hips and so forth. As a college athlete, I was a pulling guard and playing football. One of my strength coach, my position coach, in learning to pull out of a stance, say taking a step to the right. One of the things we really emphasized was taking the right elbow and driving it into the hip pocket. So starting that rotational movement with the upper part of the body as you stepped in that direction. How much focus do you put on the upper part of the body in terms of ipsilateral strength, movement, changing directions, vertical? What does the upper part of the body play, and how do you incorporate that into your training?
Yeah, I love that question. And I'll tell you, I really do, because I spent a lot of years, and I still do, I spent a lot of time training base stealing. And base stealing has a lot of similarities to a pulling guard, or depending on your offense, sometimes your tackles. And what happens, like Charlie Francis taught us years ago, that the hand action initiates initially and then the rest of the body. So when you take that right arm, if you're pulling to the right and you drive that arm open and the left hand comes with it, that is an action. Well, we know every time there's an action, there's a reaction. So if we're opening the body aggressively to the right, the reaction goes down into that left leg and away. So if you're moving to your right, you're pushing down and away to the left. That's how we move. It's no different than a sprinter, right? Sprinters going straight ahead. Well, they're pushing straight back to go straight ahead. So if we take a look at, I'll use baseball because it's such an easy visual to see. If you take a base stealer in their stance, they're ready to get a big jump and go. As my hands move quickly to the right, my right, the lead arm kind of opens and it pulls back. And then my left arm reaches out in front. So if you can imagine me in a sprinter stance now, my right arm is behind while my right leg is in front. And then my left arm is out in front while my left leg's back. Well, that's gait. So the quicker I do that, that creates an action. I get a reaction back into the ground, into that left leg. And, of course, when that leg pushes into the ground, what do we get? We get a reaction out of the ground. So all of that moves together. Again, our body's leaving us clues. So and that's how I learned this stuff. I just kept watching. One of the studies I did is I would take my athletes and I would put their back foot. So if I'm going to the right, I'd put their left foot on a slippery surface, like a slide board, or I'd put a paper plate underneath them on a carpet. And I just have them move their hands to the right as fast as they can. And every single time that left leg slipped out. And so that immediately told me, okay, the arms are actually helping drive that left leg into the ground. Much like if you're going to do a clean or a snatch, right? If you drive quickly and you pull with those, those traps to help get that extension, well, what are we getting? We're getting more force into the ground as that occurs. So yeah, the upper body is so critical. Now take an athlete doing like a lateral shuffle. It could be a volleyball player, it could be a basketball player. Sometimes we'll see their arms flap up and down like they're a bird. Well, what is that? That is the lateral gait cycle demanding that when my arms fly up, what's that doing? It's putting a reaction back down into the ground. So when we see things like that, we got to be careful not to discourage athletes from using it. We just have to guide them to say, well, maybe here's a better way or a more efficient way, but the body's doing it for a reason. So yeah, so as you pulled as a guard and you threw that hand open, that's creating energy into the ground with that left leg, and that allows you to get your mass moving to the right. So, yeah, I love that question because that's often missed in multi-directional speed.
I did not know that, Rudy, that you used to play on the line.
Absolutely.
How big were you?
About the same size I am now.
Really?
Yeah.
You're just a technician?
Coach, yep.
So 240.
Yeah, all right.
Call me the last of the watch charm
Yeah,
guards.
yeah.
I played below everybody else's knees.
Yeah, you got to play
There
that
you go.
leverage game.
Very low, very low.
Yeah, that's right.
Speaking of Gale Sayers, I used to have this anecdote. I remember as a young boy, my dad took me to a Rams game against the Bears in the Coliseum, and I can still picture Gale Sayers going full speed, running up to a linebacker, stopping, planting on his left foot, and making a 90-degree cut to the right. And I still don't know how that happened. I can't imagine.
I know.
And that linebacker was just left holding his jock straps. Like, what happened?
Yeah.
He was an
Unbelievable.
amazing athlete.
Yeah, if his knees didn't go, he might have been the guy we're talking about, all the time with the records. But he just left us too soon from the sport with those knees.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Lee, have you ever worked with an athlete who you've been concerned that you may make them slower because they're already at such a high qualification? Like if you had a Gale Sayers, in front of you, would there be any apprehension on your side to not make interventions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we do in a case like that, when you have an athlete that is really pure and just a crisp mover, all we try to do is keep that fluidity going. Just, we don't want them to become too conscious. When an athlete becomes too conscious in a reactive situation like multi-directional speed, what happens is now they slow down because we know subconscious drives us when a reaction happens. Okay, so we got to be careful of putting them in a state where they start thinking about it. And that's when I talk to interns, I'm always telling them, stop talking to them too much. Don't tell them what their body already knows. If they're already doing something well, don't go and try to break it down for them because now all of a sudden they're trying to perform something at a conscious level, which their subconscious already figured it out. So, yeah, we're real careful there. And the other thing we do with more elite athletes, let's give them some longevity. So we're going to protect their hips, protect their knees, keep their core and their pelvis alignment, so that they're, so that they don't get any undue stress. But, yeah, those are the things we try to do.
That makes a lot of sense. I could definitely see that being an issue, and it draws some parallels to what we do. We're when we talk about specific cues for our lifts, we often talk about internal versus external cueing, where an internal cue in a squat might be to use your quads, where an external cue may be to push the ground away. And we know oftentimes those external cues are going to be far more powerful because the body works to coordinate itself as a single unit. And when you draw attention to one specific area, it turns off that coordination or doesn't make it as crisp. And I think that's kind of the same idea as you're getting at with making those athletes conscious.
Yeah. Matter of fact, that was my talk in South Korea a couple days ago, is on the art of coaching. And we talked a lot about external cueing and, allowing our athletes to feel the movement rather than think the movement. And and that was one of the things we talked about, vertical jump, well, push the ground away, or we would say, put your head through the ceiling or something of that nature, which they can just naturally see. But if I said, well, turn your glutes on better, half the kids don't even know what the hell a glute is. So, yeah,
right. Yeah, half of them are walking over to you to ask what that is.
Yeah, what is a glute? And then what do I do with it? So, yeah, definitely external cueing. And again, with my background as a phys ed teacher, those are things we learned 30 years ago or more. It was, we had to be able to shape our athletes, or not our athletes, our students as phys ed. And we did a lot with cueing. So those are things we learned a long, long time ago, and it's now becoming, especially the work like Nick Winkelman and a lot of these guys have done with research is becoming much more, popular use, and I'm glad of that.
Yeah. You've been involved in physical preparation for a very long time at a very high level. What are some of the trends that you've seen come and go, and what are some of the things you've seen stick through the years of doing this?
Well, I think, again, we'll go back to one of the questions we talked about earlier, and you had mentioned is the technology. Every so many years or decades, we could say there's a form of technology that comes out, and we all jump on it, and we all follow it. And there are some that are fantastic. There are others that I think are probably not as efficient as they can be. And an example is one of the things that's really big right now are reaction lights. So they'll set up lights, and the athlete visually sees the light, and they go to that. And that's becoming popular. That's a trend right now. And I get a lot of emails, a lot of questions. Lee, what do you think about the lights and stuff? And I personally am not a huge fan of it for multiple reasons, and I'll explain those. One of them is it's a very expensive unit. Some of them are 10 grand plus. And I'm not opposed to the reaction of the eye seeing something, but here's the thing that we have to understand in the neural understanding that an athlete needs. If the three of you and I were playing a game or a tag or whatever, and you guys are trying to get to a line behind me, maybe we're on a basketball court and you're trying to get to the baseline on my side, and I got to stop you. I need to be able to judge the speed of your movement, the angle at which you're going at, my potential to cut you off, and handle if you cut back. Kind of like a safety rolling over on a wide receiver running up the sideline, and all of a sudden that running back cuts, or that receiver cuts back. Those are things that we have to teach, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I said Larry Bird's faster because he reads things, one step ahead. Those are the environments we need to get our athletes in. So when we have these lights, that's so one-dimensional. The light doesn't move. It's over there to my right or to my left or off to my side, and I see it and I move there. But I'm not helping the athlete feel movement, angles, how much time I have to get there and how much distance I have and the potential of that athlete moving. So that is a trend I'm seeing a lot now where we're getting into these visuals and things like that. But with the visual, we have to have the understanding of movement, space, allotment of time, and things of that nature. So that's definitely one that I think we got to be careful of. And then another one, and I still get a lot of questions, is what we call towing or assisted sprinting when they pull you into the speed. I think we got to be really careful there. Some athletes we can do that with at the right time, but that was a trend that happened many years ago, and it kind of lost its steam for a while because we were seeing athletes actually getting hurt and losing speed because when you get pulled, what's your natural reaction? Is to put the brakes on, all right? But if I get if I'm being resisted, what's my natural reaction is to lean into it and to push. So I'm a fan of resistance, like sled work and resisted tubing and all that kind of stuff. But assisted was a trend because I tried them all. Believe me, when I speak of this, I've done them all. I've made all the mistakes, or not always mistakes. They're learning experiences. And we just find that, the trends will come and go, but if we get too far away from laws of movement, I think that's when we get in trouble. And I've always said, one of my statements I make all the time, until gravity changes, I'm not changing. So it's like,
I remember in college we had the defensive coaches always set up angles of pursuit drills. So
yes.
You give them actual experience on judging your opponent's speed and, where's the cutoff point, where are you going to meet him.
That's right.
But when they cut back, the question I have now is, how do you teach the athlete there to gather? They're moving at an angle over the right shoulder. Athlete they're pursuing cuts back to their left. How do they change directions quickly? Do they gather somehow? What is the way that you teach that?
Yeah, and again, what we want to remember is that's going to be that puts the athlete in a reactive state. Okay, so anytime they're in a reactive state, they're going to reposition. So if I'm moving to my right, over my right shoulder, the player's going up the left sideline, and all of a sudden they cut back. What's going to happen is my right leg is going to be the outside foot plant because it's wider than my center of mass. Okay, my left foot is inside my center of mass. Not saying that the left foot won't have a part in helping decelerating, kind of like a shuttle run. That inside foot does touch, but the outside foot is the one that is going to do what I call create a reacceleration angle, which means we do decelerate, but the goal is to reaccelerate and to get going back in the new direction as quick as we can. So if I'm in a dead sprint, I'm going to do what we call a lateral run stop. And that all that means is I'm going to kind of turn my hips, just like if I'm doing a shuttle run. Okay, if I'm doing, say, a 60-yard shuttle, I go to 5, back, 10, 5. I turn my hip and ankle, I plant, and then I push off and I come back. But ideally, what I would like to be able to do is, if I'm smart and do those pursuit drills your coach had you do, as I start approaching that sideline in that athlete, and I know all I need is a quick burst to be able to cut that sideline off. That's having the experience to know all I got to do is stay in position. I want to start to square my shoulders up a little bit towards that athlete. So if they do cut back on me, I'm almost in like a shuffle stance. So I'm much quicker to be able to go right or left and still cover about 6 to 8 feet quickly on either side with just one quick step. And then I've still got the ability to get back into acceleration and catch them if I need to. But it's always going to be that outside foot. So in that case, that example would be my right foot planting wider. That sends me back over my left foot. Then I become that sprinter again, just like a base stealer turning and running.
Yeah, that's great stuff. So you must work with college coaches, and do you work with like defensive back coaches? Are those some of your clients that come to you for those kinds of drills?
Yes, I have. I get a lot of some people will come to my house. I train out of my garage a lot now because I travel so much. Having a facility that wasn't real great for me. But yeah, or I go to them. You know, I've gone to some of the major colleges. They brought me in to work with them on these techniques. Even like, you know, we talk about, if we're talking about cornerbacks, like do we use a vertical heel or do we use a T-step if we're going to break? Well, your body figures that out for you. And the reason you would use a T-step is maybe speed was too high. If I use a full foot plant, I'm a little bit more stable versus a vertical heel, which is if I'm doing maybe like a 3-step back, pedal, then break. So, yes, we do it. We spend a lot of time helping defensive back coaches and even linebackers. So, yeah, absolutely.
How did you tell us a little bit more? We kind of jumped right into content here, and we didn't talk much about your background and how you mentioned you were a college athlete, where you went to school, and then how you decided to become the speed guy and how that all worked out.
Yeah, well, I was a college basketball player, played 4 years of college, I played 2 years of tennis, and I didn't play 4 years of tennis because the college that I transferred to, which is called Cortland State in New York, I'm a New Yorker, it's a SUNY system. If you're familiar with the SUNY system in New York,
State
they're big.
University of New York, yeah.
Yeah, all the big, Albany State and Binghamton, all these. And so when I was in college, my coach used to make me watch film, all the games, and I started to get really enamored with how defenders were guarding me. I watched their feet, and then I started to watch myself play defense, and then I started to listen to how coaches were telling us to move based on how we actually moved, and that's what intrigued me to do the research back then. And this was in the mid-'80s, starting to do some research and finding what biomechanics meant, what physics meant, laws of movement. And so my degree was phys ed. When I finished phys ed, or got into teaching phys ed, I was still training athletes at that time. And then, I did my master's after a couple of years of teaching at the United States Sports Academy, and that led me right into strength and conditioning back in 91. And even though I was doing it sooner than that, but kind of as a full-time thing back in 91. And then I just... I attacked this multi-directional speed concept, which a lot of people were not familiar with it. They were more straight-ahead speed, and I just kind of developed my own concepts because I couldn't find a lot on it. There wasn't much information on it out there. So, so that's kind of how it happened. And then it's funny, somebody gave me the name the Speed Guy, and it just kind of stuck. And, it was better than because my first... The first name I was given, I was at at the Doral Open. It's called the Easter Bowl, which is one of the largest U.S. junior tennis tournaments. And I'm walking around with a stack of cones doing clinics all throughout the day. And so one guy and his wife were walking by, and they saw me sitting there with my cones and said, "Hey, look, there's the cone man." So,
at least you weren't the cone head, right?
That's right. I wasn't the cone head. But I like the speed guy better than the cone man.
So video got you started. You still use video in your training?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny. I was never the most fluid person with technology, but with my phone, I have it with me all the time. And when my athletes are doing any kind of training, as a matter of fact, I did an assessment this morning on a girl that has a hip issue. Parents brought her over, and so I assessed her squat, I assessed her lunge, I assessed her, movement and stuff. So we can slow it down and see it. And yeah, definitely, it's a great tool.
That's great. Well, yeah, we probably need to wrap it up here pretty quick.
Yeah.
You want to?
No, so Lee, it's been great having you on. Where can our listeners find about you? Find about I know you've got some educational content out there. I believe you've got some certifications. Walk us through how they can find out more.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you allowing me to do so. But yeah, if you just go to leetaft.com, real simple, you can find all our information, our products, and things we're doing. And we've got some new things coming up. I do these little clinics called the Jumpstart Speed Clinics, and they're just 2 hours, but they're packed full of information for the athletes and the coaches. And we can find all that stuff at leetaft.com. And gosh, anybody can reach out to me anytime. I'm a people person, and I'm a profession guy. I like the profession. I want to get it better. So
what's
definitely
the best way to reach out to you? Email, social media?
Yeah. If you can just go lt@leetaft.com. That's my direct email, and you can find it on Facebook as well. And but yep, any way they want to reach out to me, I'm always available.
All right, thanks, Lee.
All right, and for our audience, we want to thank you for listening today. And as always, check out kabuki.ms for all your movement needs, and check out kabukistrength.com for all your coaching needs. Thank you so much for being on today, Lee, and hopefully we can continue this chat maybe for a round 2, or stay in touch another way.
Yeah,
I would love that. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right,
great. Thanks so much, Lee.
Thank you, Lee.
Yep, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lee. That was great. Good job.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I like I said, I can go for hours talking about this stuff. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Hey, do you ever get to any of the NSCA or CSCCA trade shows at all? Or?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking in Virginia at the NSCA tactical seminar this year. I think it's in April, maybe.
April, yeah.
Yep, and then I'm there, and then every once in a while I'll be at the national convention. They'll have me speak, and I might be at it this year. I can't remember.
I was
if I'm
just
at
asking because we're going to be back in NSCA next
Oh,
month.
good.
It's in Charlotte, I think. So.
Oh, okay.
Just checking to see if you might be there.
Yeah, no, I won't be at that one, but yeah, I get at them when I can, and a couple of the other state ones there, and so I speak a lot of the state ones too.
Well, if you're at any of those, we're having a booth at a lot of the NSCA and CSCCA events. So if you see us on there, swing by and say hi.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be at the CSCA one in is that Texas? Where is that this year? I think
it's going to be in Fort Worth again.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'll be at that one speaking. I look forward to definitely stopping.
First week of May, I think.
Yes.
We'll be at that one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. I'll definitely stop in.
Great. All right, Lee, thanks again.
Yep, thank you guys. Have a great one.
Try to stay warm back there.
I will.
Thanks, Lee.
All right, thank you. Bye now.